This is about Sunset Carson. He's rated today in the top 10 Western movie stars ever. And back in those days, he was real famous. And he was rated, they didn't have ratings like they do today, but they did have magazines, you know, and they'd give where they're rated. And of course, everybody knows Gene Autry and Roy Rogers were the two tops. One time one would be tops, the next time the other would be tops. And Sunset Carson was nearly always third man. So he was rated among the top Western movie stars. He was the most handsome man I ever saw. He was about 6'3", and he was a little rosy complexion. He's part Indian, and black wavy hair. And he was the most handsome man. And I had Jenny to agree with me that one time. Said, yes, it is. He believed he's the most handsome man I ever saw. So anyway, I was promoting wrestling, and they had just closed those Western movies, those B-grade movies. They just quit making them. And there he was stranded, and this guy from Paducah was out there and met him some way. And he was just out of a job, nowhere to go and nothing to do. Of course, he was famous. And he talked him into coming with him back here to Kentucky. And our wrestling booking office booked him as a special referee for the main event. And he packed the house everywhere we went. And my booker, I booked the wrestlers, he said, how would you like to have Sunset Carson for his special referee? I said, who? Said Sunset Carson. Well, I didn't go to those Western movies. We didn't come to town on Saturday night and spend money. And I didn't know who he was. So I said, never heard of him. Well, you just book him. Said, he'll pack the house for you. He gets 25%, but said, you'll make money on it. And I said, well, okay, I'll take him. And people started saying, you mean Sunset Carson's going to come to Bowling Green? Yeah, he'll be here. Well, I promoted wrestling in about 3 towns, and time I booked in all 3 of the towns, he and I got to be pretty friendly. And then he was just about finished with this circuit of wrestling, and I said, where are you going from here? He said, I really haven't settled on anything yet. And I said, I had the band, and I had a good band too. And I said, why don't you let me book you in theaters with your movie and my band together? He said, well, that sounds all right. And I started booking him in theaters, and then one of the big agents, Gus Son and Company, was a booking agent, and they took him over and booked him for me and kept me posted of where to go. And we kept busy just about every night playing big theaters, and he'd pack the house everywhere we'd go. And he did a sharpshooter knife with a rifle. He could split a bullet. And down at the Quonset, he came down there to practice one time shooting. And it's back when the beer cans, whether you know it or not, they were different. They tapered up, you know, and had a little bitty round hole in the middle. Those old-fashioned beer cans. He'd line him up down there on the back there on the bluff and get so far off, and he'd shoot. He'd shoot through that hole, was about the size of my finger. He'd shoot through that hole, and the reason he knew because the hole was in the back of the can where the bullet came out. He was that good with the rifle. He did sharpshooting act on stage, and we did our show, and in fact the theater everywhere where we went. And we traveled at night usually because it's a little hard for him to go in and eat. People would worry him, you know. They'd recognize him, and they'd all come on his autograph, and it would be hard for him to eat. So we traveled at night when we'd finish our show in this theater. We'd travel in the wee night like that, and then go to a motel as close as we could get to the theater and check in. Well, we checked in this theater. Well, we pulled his horse. We had his horse was with us and had his name on the trailer. And the kids, they all knew he was coming to town. And the next morning, the manager of that hotel called my room and woke me up and said, what are we going to do? We got to get that guy out of here. What do you mean? Said, this lobby is full of kids. Said, I can't operate down here. It's just full of kids looking for him. They want to see him, want to see him. I said, well, I don't know what to do. What can I do? He said, I tell you, I've got to figure it out. Said, y'all come down the elevator and come down to the basement, all the way down to the basement, and we'll come out the basement door, and the theater was real close to that basement door across there. I'll call the theater manager, and I'll have him to be at the back door and open the back door, and y'all come out the back door and make a run for the back door of the theater. So we did. They got him up. He got out of the bed. And we went down to the bottom, came out the basement, and the manager was standing up there to the front door. And we started. He said, yonder he goes, yonder he goes. And the kids looked out, saw him running in the back door. So the manager shut the door just before the kids got there. And they all went around and bought a ticket. And we did an extra show that day just because that theater was nearly full of kids. And we did an extra show just for the kids with him. So, and one night, one of them had a pair of scissors trying to clip a curl from his hair. But she couldn't reach it high. He was pretty tall. I got her away. But he was a famous person. And he was just like my brother. We traveled together. And then later on, he went overseas. Somebody took his movies and went overseas and showed him over there, and he was big over there. And when he came back, he came into Nashville, because that's kind of the center of every place you book. And he called me, and I went down there to see him, and I started booking him. He still, right at that time, he was out of something to do. I started booking him in the schools during the day for chapel programs and do a shooting act. Of course, we didn't take the band. He just did the shooting act and did a little talk, a little safety talk about the rifles, how to handle them, not handle them. And he'd have a girl to hold a piece of chalk in her mouth. He'd shoot it out of her mouth and all that kind of stuff. And so I booked him in schools a lot. I booked him in 2 schools every day, close together, and it's very seldom a school ever turned him down. They'd charge admission, 50 cents, and then we'd give the school, I think, 20 or 30% of it, and he got the rest. And he made money doing that. So that's the story of Sunset Carson. He was selected as in the Hall of Fame. He's in the Cowboy Hall of Fame. He's been dead now about 4 or 5 years, died of heart attack. But he was my friend. He was just like my brother.
They call it that old Mountain Dew. Them that refuse it are few. If you shove your mug, I'll fill up your jug with that good